If you saw part 1 of this video, you'll know that the very night that Amy in Sonic 3 was leaked, I actually 3D modeled it. And I had some changes that I wanted to make in between these videos. You'll see that as more screenshots of that came out, there were a lot more details, and the hair actually sticks up higher, and I refined it in between these videos, and I think it works out all the better for it. So I wanted to start with this Tails figure, and I tried to pull the tail off, but it broke at the plastic instead of the joint. Sorry, Tails. But I didn't even end up using Tails anyway. Ooh, sorry, Shadow. Now, I find the 5-inch figures kind of hard to make customs of. I didn't even bother trying to get the head right. I figured since this was a one-off, I was just gonna file down the ball joint and make something work with the neck. And that involves cutting it down and finding out that that joint was hollow inside, so it wasn't gonna have a lot of good structure. Kind of a mess what I was doing here. But eventually I got a little peg that would fit, and then I filled it in with green stuff. It's a 2-part putty that when you mix together, it dries in about 20 minutes. And the idea here was shoving the head onto it to try to get the right shape that would grip well. This didn't work great because when I pulled it off, the green stuff kind of pulled apart, and it took a lot of work later. But in the meantime, let's get to painting. As you know from my Black Doom video, I use an airbrush now, so I went ahead and did some primer over the head, which is hard to see because it's gray over gray. Then I airbrush primered the body too. It has so many joints that none of the paint on the body really worked well, but I was going to be covering it with a cloak anyway. Hi, Poppy. Hi. You coming over? Whoa! You gonna help me? So nice. So nice. This is really satisfying. I put masking tape over the eye where I wanted to keep it white, and I used a razor blade to cut out the edges so that I could have a real nice clean masking. Look at that, as the eye comes out, you see it just perfectly masked over it. I shouldn't say perfectly, there was still some cleanup, but it really did a good job. In an upcoming video, I am working on squid, and I used the same masking technique there, and it was super satisfying as well. So I've had this messy paint sitting around for a long time, finally have an opportunity to use it. I mix it with some airbrush thinner, and then paint it all over the body. Now it started looking really good in the shade that I wanted as I was airbrushing over it, but that was because it hadn't fully covered the surface. Once it started covering the full surface, it was just way too saturated, kind of a neon pink. So I had to go and lighten that. So I mixed in a little bit of this white paint, and eventually I got a shade that I liked. Now here comes the really satisfying part of tearing off that tape. And if you look closely, it's not perfect, but with just a few touch-ups, I was able to get the eyes looking really nice and clean. Poppy approves. I used these two colors mixed together to try to get the muzzle color. And Poppy also approved of that. Here you can see I'm cleaning up the whites of the eyes a little bit. And then getting that tan color on the mouth. I mixed in some brighter tans and went over the top of the mouth to kind of give it shading, and then I dry brushed kind of a gradient going from the center of the nose out to the pink. I also put some tan there for the ears. I used this black pen to do the black parts of the nose and also her eyelashes. And I'm really glad I sculpted in the eyelashes to give me a guide of where to do this, and kind of a raised edge that helped me. I started drawing in pupils and then painting green over that, but eventually I just painted green over the entire thing just because I wanted to do a gradient and it was just going to be easier to do it without the pupils and come back later. So I mixed this yellow and green and then gradually, just one layer at a time, added a little bit more yellow to the bottom going up until I had this nice gradient going across. Now I'd done all that work on this gradient and it was time to put the pupils back in, which was very nerve-wracking. I didn't want to have to redo all of this if I did it wrong, so I very carefully redid those pupils, and I'm pleased to say I got it right on the first try. I took this bright red and some black and some purplish, and I couldn't really tell in the footage what color her headband is. It kind of looked purple, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be red. So I went with kind of a desaturated red just because it was hard to tell from the lighting in that footage. And I used a clear sealer to make sure that all this nice paint was protected. So what I did for the neck is added a little bit of super glue and then moved the neck continuously. This helped kind of fill in the gaps and gave it a pretty good grip so it doesn't fall off. So I was feeling lazy for the shoes. I wasn't able to take them off of the model, so I figured I'd just use some green stuff to model them with clay. They came out pretty long, but since they're going to be mostly covered by the cloak, I didn't really care that much. But I wanted to get them nice and smooth. So I have all different grits of sandpaper, starting with really low numbers, 120 to 180, then all the way up to these 2000s and even 4000. I started with a file to get down some of the details. And then gradually built it up so it got smoother and smoother as I went. Then I masked it off and painted them kind of a reddish brown. I kind of tried to match the color of the headband, but it still came out too brown. If I were to do this again, I'd probably realize that I could have gone more red. This was a cape I bought off of Amazon, and I tried to dye it, but the dyeing didn't work well at all. Poppy did not approve. Obviously the hood on this isn't big enough, but I didn't really care about the hood itself. I just wanted that poncho shape that she has. There's also that part around the neck, and what I ended up doing was just spray painting it with plum spray paint, which was really janky, but once it all came together, I was happy with it. Then I needed to sew this up, so I just got some needles and thread. And you'll know from my last project, Black Doom, that I now sew a little bit. Very poorly. This fabric was really also pretty hard to work with. So this is my third cloth project. Previous was Black Doom, and before that I did a little bit of cloth on my Whisper figure. So if you haven't seen those, go check them out after this. Then I needed to 3D model the hammer, so I put together a ton of reference and did my best to match it up to the size and the details. There's very few orthographic shots of this, so I kind of had to look at the angles and kind of think about, okay, this part looks a little big because it's angled, but if I were to balance it out, it would be symmetrical in this way. So it took a lot of work of trying to figure that out. And these are some kind of iris, so I imagine that parts of the weapon are going to come out whenever we do see it in Sonic 4. I'm sure these will open up in some magical way, even though there's not really the physical space in there for an iris to actually open, but I love the design of it. I built this in what I think is a pretty smart way because I wanted it to be both light and sturdy. So it comes in all these pieces, and then I fit cake pop sticks into the center to have a little give, and then I have kind of a 3D printed sheath around that. I just did this fun little animation for the fun of it. So then I 3D printed it, and it's time to paint. So here's all the pieces printed. You can see the cake pop stick fits very nicely into the hole. It has reinforcements on both sides. And then here's the sheath that I was talking about. That also fits into another hole in the hammer and fits very snugly. Then it was just a matter of super gluing these pieces together and getting to painting. I airbrushed a flat black primer on top and then gold for the parts that needed to be gold. And then I've been wanting to use this red paint forever. I actually used it a little bit on my Reaper metal for the eyes, but nothing that was really visible as a big metal object. So I was really happy with how this turned out on the hammer. Then I painted in all the little details like the silver edges and the gold vents and things. And it was looking pretty cool. So here is the final result. I kind of put the cape sideways so that the old hood that wouldn't fit her head is kind of like the neck part that you can see in the movie. And I decided to not make a hood at all because I wasn't going to display it this way. Maybe for future projects when I'm better at making fabric. Poppy approves. Whoa, I didn't do this on stream, but we do have Patreon shoutouts to give. First of all, at our Tails level, we have YBZ and Kurotsuchi. And at our Shadow level, we have Chappis. Whoops. And our new member, Cyberamic Puppy. Thank you all so much for your support. I very much appreciate it. It's been a while since I made a video because I've been in a musical, but I am back. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this video.